So when it comes to dribbling, very simply, and the kids will be doing this a little later on, is I always start on the knee because that automatically lowers the level of the dribble. If you lower the level of the dribble in a child, he or she will have a better chance of having the ball come up to them. There are two major flaws, as you'll see, when it comes to dribbling. Number one is they want to put their eyes on it because, of course, they're not that comfortable looking around without having the ball in their hand. And that can produce a problem down the road when teammates on their team want to catch the ball from them and they're too busy looking at the ball. So that's one problem that you see at all levels of basketball. The other problem is not necessarily as obvious. Children, because of their lack of strength and thinking the ball is pretty heavy and it bounces okay, tend to put way too much of their upper arm into the ball. I call this sort of the shoulder effect, where they sort of slam the ball. Now, if you have any ball that is somewhat filled up with air, and you've got a flat floor, the balls tend to be, especially sometimes helium balls, which bounce hard. So all of a sudden you're throwing the ball at the ground and it's shooting to the ceiling, and that can be a very difficult thing for the kids. So I always start them on their knees because that lets them learn how to dribble with the muscles from the tip of their fingers to their elbows. I take the upper arm and the shoulder out of the dribble. So it's just a quick little pat, and even your youngest kids, your second, third graders, and your weaker kids or your lesser developed kids can somewhat get the handle of that, especially with their strong hand. So very simply, we always start with the knees, and then we move to standing, where we try to get them low. And I have a set of activities, which you'll see, where I do numbers and let them get their heads up when they're dribbling. But I always try to start them a little lower from the stand, and then we move from there. In the PE world, we call this progressions, which is basically adding difficulty or degree of difficulty to the skill. If you were to go through the progressions of dribbling, you'd probably come up with about 105, from dribbling on the knee with your strong hand to trying to dribble through a double team through your legs or something like that. For the purposes of what we're doing with these young kids, we're worried about progressions number 1 to 6 or 1 to 8. How can they dribble standing still? How can they dribble maybe moving with their strong hand, maybe moving with their weak hand? Anytime you can get with a child in a practice, give them the ability to dribble and do some things in a pack of kids by themselves. As long as that ball's on their hand, they will get better at it. But there are two things don't worry about. They'll get better eventually, maybe, we hope. It's going to be the eyes, getting the eyes up so they're not looking at the dribbling, and it's going to be that dastardly upper arm where they're going to want to slam that ball off the ground, and it's going to fly up, and obviously the faster it goes down, the faster it's going to come up. So as a coach, have patience. It is the number one tenet of youth coaching. I say this all the time in my talks. You have to have patience if you're going to coach kids. And this is one of those times with these skills that you're going to have to be very careful. So let them dribble to their heart's content. They're going to double dribble, which of course is two things. You're dribbling the ball with two hands, or dribbling once, stopping, and then dribbling again. At your levels, sometimes referees are very good about letting them even double dribble, even letting them commit these violations. And some people stay against that because how are we going to learn, how are these kids going to learn the right way if we're letting them double dribble? Remember who you're dealing with here. You're dealing with 8-year-olds and 10-year-olds. They've got to learn something, and they want to learn at their own pace. Some kids, standard statistical distribution will be better than others or less worse. That's fine. But give them it in small doses and let them dribble and get those balls and get certainly as many balls as you can for the number of kids. I stole this again from the soccer people 20 years ago. If you come to a practice with kids, make sure every kid has a ball. If you don't have them in your program, find some balls, or make sure the kids bring their own balls from home. Every kid has a basketball lying around the house. You always want kids in your practice to have a ball. You don't want 3 balls and 12 kids. You don't want 2 balls or 8 kids, because that means 6 kids are going to be standing around, and 6 little boys about 10 years old standing around means mischief.
But we have to keep our head up, okay? So to keep our head up, I'm going to flash some fingers for you, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0. I want to hear you shout out how many fingers I have up while you're dribbling the basketball, okay?
The children are dribbling, but in order to keep their hands up, Coach Gary is now holding up fingers, and they have to look at his fingers, which obviously keeps their heads off the ball, their eyesight, and gives them a chance to learn how to dribble without looking at the ball.